All right. Hi, AmyAnn. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to catch up and
I
connect.
know it's so good to see you. I have loved doing these podcast interviews because people who I hadn't seen
Yeah,
before pandemic, like, because I feel like people we would run into each other at events or just things going on, and this podcast has been such a way to reconnect with people that I haven't seen for over 2 years because of COVID and everything that comes with that.
totally. Yeah, same. I feel like I'm enjoying connecting virtually and then actually starting to see people in my life too, which is
Mm-hmm.
really wonderful.
Yes, I know. It's great. So, AmyAnn, you are the founder of The Good Trade, which is one of my favorite websites. It's my go-to. Anytime I'm looking for like a good sustainable brand, or I'm like, oh, it was my birthday a few weeks ago and I got some birthday money. I was like, I need to go on The Good Trade and see like where I'm going to spend this money because you guys are the go-to website for a sustainable brand, sustainable fashion, and really just sustainable lifestyle. So I'd love to hear from you a little bit about where this started for you, what this journey looked like for you at the very beginning.
Yeah, sure. So I started the publication in grad school at 24, and it feels like a lifetime ago. um, I was studying social entrepreneurship and social impact sustainability in my graduate work here in LA. And when I moved out to Los Angeles, I moved for the graduate program. My husband Blake and I, we had a blog in Kansas City before we moved here to LA, and we sold that when we moved because we felt like it would be kind of disingenuous to have like a Kansas City food blog that we were running from Los Angeles. So it was about, like local restaurants and shops and stuff. Anyways, during grad school, I was really itching to like start a blog, start a publication again. And it ended up just being very synergistic to start writing about what I was learning in my graduate work. And at that time, I don't know if you've ever seen or remembered the documentary The True Cost, but
Mm-hmm.
that documentary and other kind of cultural conversations were starting to happen around particularly fast fashion and how fashion and the production of it was very harmful to a lot of the laborers involved across the world, and also just the environmental impact of the rapid production. And so I watched that documentary and I really started to kind of focus my studies in fashion, in labor issues, and try to understand like, are there brands that are doing better by people on the planet, particularly in the fashion space? And because that's such a large industry with such a wide human and planet impact. And so, anyways, that's where we kind of started with our content, was featuring more sustainable fashion brands. One of our first articles was a guide to 35 fair trade clothing brands that are betting against fashion. It's still one of our top 3 articles that really took off. And it was like painful to try to find 35 brands that were sustainable and were like, slower in their production practices. And
And
were
this was how
talking,
many years ago?
this was in 8 years ago, like
Okay.
2013, 2014.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the industry has changed so dramatically since then, which has been wonderful. I think the Good Trade has been able to be a part of that in helping really like educate consumers and also point them in direction of companies that are doing better. But it's raised the whole water level, I think, of the conversation, where larger brands are now very at least interested because their customers are interested in sustainability. So anyways, that's where we got started, and I went full time with the company after I graduated from grad school and started scaling a team, and our office is now in Echo Park in LA, and you've been here.
Yeah. It's a
Thank
beautiful space that you have there.
you. Yeah. What
Wow. So it all started with that first blog article about 35 35 fair trade brands.
Yeah, that was our first like viral article. Like it was our first, we had published maybe, I don't know, maybe 30 or 40 articles in the first year. And that was the one that really took off because I think people, were starting to understand the idea of like someone actually made the garments that I'm wearing and what were the conditions that these pieces were made in and how is that impacting the environment. And so I think fashion is a really interesting entry point for people into sustainability because it's an area where people can change their behavior maybe more easily than larger things like what kind of cars are we driving, how are we powering our homes, all of that. But there can be these more subtle shifts in fashion that are like, I'm going to try to buy secondhand. I'm going to try to learn how to repair my own garments that I have that I love. I'm going to learn how to buy like one sweater that was made ethically, very high quality instead of 5 like kind of more cheaply made garments. And so I think that was a very natural starting place. And now this conversation around sustainability expands into, really all areas of life and lifestyle. And our message has really grown from just focus on sustainability and sustainable like shopping recommendations to really like self-care, community wellness. These are really important aspects of sustainability because we can't really take care of the planet or our community if we don't first take care of ourselves and our families. And so that has been the content that's really resonated with our readers as well.
Oh, that's amazing. So what were you studying in grad school?
Yeah, so my graduate degree is in social impact. So it was very like synergistic with kind of everything I was learning. And through grad school, we were, introduced and exposed to all these different companies that were really working to do better by people and the planet. And we were learning about kind of the intersection of like nonprofit meets for-profit. How do you have a company that's like a for-profit, has a sustainable business model, but is also intending to like do good in the world and take care of all of the constituents that are involved in that making, producing, marketing, and consuming of whatever product or service they were creating.
Wow. So it sounds like this was really something that was a conviction of yours. You watched this documentary, True Cost, which I've watched as well. And yeah, definitely opened my eyes. I'm sure some of our listeners have seen it. If you haven't, go watch it. And you dove into this, you dove into your program in grad school, you dove into creating this blog, and then you were able to take it full time. I'm curious about that process. Like, what did that look like? How did you monetize the blog enough to be able to say, okay, this is what I'm going to be able to do? Because I think so many people struggle with, okay, this is something that I feel really passionate, that I love. How do I expand that into the world? And maybe it's a job, maybe it's a side thing, maybe it's, something you do on the weekends, or maybe it's a business you create. I think it can look a lot of different ways, but what did that look like for you to be able to take this thing that you felt so passionate about, getting the word out about sustainability? What did that look like to monetize that and make that into not only your job, but into a business and where you're starting to build a team?
Yeah. I think that it happens very naturally, and for us, almost accidentally. Like I didn't start out to start a large women's lifestyle media company, certainly. I had a bit of understanding of blogging and different monetization kind of methods and tracks from the publication we had started and before. So that was a helpful idea of like, this is like a worthy investment of my time. But I was initially, it was very much just like an outlet for kind of what I was learning and a passion, true passion project while I was in grad school full time, while I was working full time. Like, it was not like my full time energy, certainly. And I think for my story, and I feel that this is something that sometimes young entrepreneurs get away from, is like, the goal for us is always to serve the reader and to build something meaningful for the reader. And once you've built something very meaningful for your target audience, there's like a lot of ways to monetize, but we were ruthlessly and still are focused on like, how do we serve and engage our reader? And so the monetization kind of followed from there, and that looked like direct advertising partnerships. It looked like in the early stages, what was really helpful and like kind of unheard of at the time is like commission based. It's called affiliate marketing now, and it's a big part of the media landscape. But it was so wonderful for us in the beginning because most of the partners that we were working with didn't have a budget for marketing. These are small companies. They did not have $5,000 or $50,000 for like a campaign. And so the commission model of like, we're going to recommend you, we'll tell our readers that there might be, a 3% commission that comes back to us for our work. And that was how we got traction. And that affiliate marketing is how Everlane scaled in the beginning, how many of the main kind of social impact, social good brands scaled early on when they didn't, obviously, and Everlane ended up raising many rounds of funding, but your smaller or mid-sized companies that didn't raise funding for direct marketing efforts really were able to grow and scale through referrals and through commission models. And so that always was really wonderful to keep us just laser focused on like, what does the reader want? It kept us aligned and never having to take our eyes on like, what does the partner want? We don't work for our partners, we work for our readers. And that's been like a wonderful through line in building the business. I went full time. We had hit 500,000 monthly page views, and I was like, oh, this is like a big site. This is like the largest site in the space by 10 or 15x. And I think that gave me the confidence to be like, okay, it's time to devote my full-time efforts and to start to build a team. And we built the team very gradually. And I've never taken funding, never taken outside funding. So the growth of the company has been organic, and the team growth has followed, as the business has developed.
And I think it really speaks to how you really are on the forefront of this conversation, and you have been on the forefront and really led this conversation for so many. I'm curious, like, that's so interesting about the affiliate marketing. It wasn't really quite a thing then. And you called it, was it just called commission?
Yeah. I mean, some of it was just like direct us talking to the brand and literally like just saying, well, we'll take, maybe we can negotiate a referral fee instead of paying us up front. Like we'll be happy to keep paid later if we set.
And was that something that you pitched to them, or that was a conversation? What did that look like?
Yeah, totally. It was brands coming to us saying like, we really want to get in front of your audience. We have this really like, very good company. And we want to be in front of your audience, and we have $0. I'm like, well, I can't feed my team on $0. So that was something that we started pitching to brands that didn't have budget. It was like, let's talk about a referral. And now, fast forward, and like there are tons of affiliate marketing platforms, and obviously we've learned a lot about that since then, and most brands now are familiar with that, and that's a part of their marketing strategies. Yeah, it was definitely like, but both those things, I think we were on the early stages, both of this sustainability conversation, but then also the like publishing was absolutely getting turned on its head in terms of the business models.
Yeah.
Social media, everything was like disrupting the traditional way that advertisements worked. And we're still going through those disruptions. It's been like, very disruptive years for publishing. And we've been able to kind of navigate with those. One of the key ways we've navigated with that is just like really leaning into newsletter, because for us, there's always an algorithm in between delivering our content to our readers and the people that want to see our content, whether that's Google search, Google's algorithm, or social channels, all of the algorithms there. Newsletter is the only thing where we get to go directly to our reader in the moment that we want to. And so we've invested really heavily there and have really thriving newsletter channels that feed back into the site and the social channels. But that's kind of another like category of disruption that has been important for us to have a point of view and perspective on.
Your newsletter is so wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
Like if you're listening and you're not on it, get on it, because it's so genius how beautiful it is. I mean, that's all your brand is, so beautifully designed. It just feels so calming when you get onto your site, and the email newsletter is the same. It's so simple. It very much speaks to, like you said, you really have done such a wonderful job at speaking to what your reader wants and is interested in, because I feel like you're reading my mind when I read these things or when I hop on your site, and I'm like, wow, they really know their customer, because anytime I feel that you're reading my mind, I know that there's been a lot of work put into that and knowing who your customer is. And that's how I feel with your newsletter and your blog as well. But you've done such a good job at that.
We really take reader feedback like so seriously. Like we really do not publish anything on a site or the newsletter unless we've seen, we use social listening tools, we use search algorithm tools as well, but mostly we just like really listen to feedback, comments, messages, emails from our readers on like what they want to see and what they want to hear. And it's wonderful how like someone can reach out and say, oh, I'm so curious, like, can you share more recipe, X type of recipes or whatever? And it really resonates for like a lot of speakers. And I think that's a really wonderful learning that we just like, we don't publish on a whim. We don't like throw spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks. We try to make sure everything that we're saying, even if that means we say less, actually like is what our readers want to see and read and hear from us. So I'm glad that you love the newsletter.
Yeah, I do. And I remember when you first were launching it, first backing up, I wanted to ask you about this. Do you ever get, I'm sure you do, you have a large website, but do you ever get people that are, negatively saying things about your site, or when you get that negative feedback, how do you handle that? And how do you work with that, as well as kind of the good stuff that people want to hear more?
Yeah, I feel like that is like so fundamental and foundational. We listen and we talk through as a team almost weekly the feedback that we're getting. And it's how we rely on it very deeply, like the critical feedback to, adjust as we see fit. So like a good example of this, few years ago, we didn't have anything about size inclusivity on our site, like about the fashion brands we were promoting, like literally nothing. I think we've always been forward around other types of inclusivity. And we have a diverse team, and that helps to, make that like a core value. But there just were not a lot of ethical fashion brands that had extended sizes. And it was kind of a blind spot for us as well. And so we started getting a lot of reader feedback. And that was something that we immediately, like, we went to all of our partners and affiliates and we were like, we can't work with you anymore. Like we need to have at least enough brands that are it, with inclusive and so that like literally everybody type can participate. And that's we get a lot of reader feedback about fashion that's not so gender binary. And I think listening to all of this feedback, it's like the audience is like maybe a step ahead of us, and then the brands are kind of behind, and we get to really like learn from our readers and our audience, and then navigate and negotiate that with the brands and be like, I'm sorry, we can't put you in the top 5 on this list because you don't have any diverse models. Like you don't have any size inclusivity represented on your site at all. And it's put us in like a really wonderful position, I think, to be like, well, we get X million views to this listicle every year. And like, if you're able to focus on these priorities over the next year, then we can consider you for 2022. And that's been really great. I think that feels like, real impact that we get to have. So all that to say, like, we like the feedback because that's where we learn, and that's where we stay ahead, and that's where we can actually, help the industry to change and evolve.
Yeah, gosh, it's so amazing to see that you are literally like educating and helping these brands know how they can change and make themselves better. And then you'll be able to put them on the top 5 or whatever. But wow, what a powerful voice you have, not only to us as readers, but also to the brands. That's very powerful.
Yeah, and I have so much respect for the brands that are, across industries looking to implement sustainability in their practices. And I think that it often puts a microscope on them for other ethics conversations that maybe they aren't as knowledgeable about or didn't set out to necessarily solve every problem. They were looking to solve, a very specific problem. And I think part of our work too is to give them credit for that area that they are solving, that they are improving, and then to help them, think about other things that also matter essentially to their customers. And to say, the person that cares about sustainability, like also cares about representation, or also cares about like, companies being BIPOC and female owned, and like, how can we, bring on for companies that don't have representation into their corporate structures, into their executive levels of leadership. And obviously these have been more and more important, potent conversations just in the last couple of years too.
Wow. So it sounds like you have a really good ability to see this stuff as data and not identity. Like that's something I have to constantly be reminding myself of, is like when that negative feedback comes, or, when the mess ups happen, to take it as data and not take it on as identity. But I think that's hard when you are doing something that is so close to your heart. And I think perfectionism gets into that, wishing you had done it different, or you should have known better before. But it sounds like you have a really good handle on seeing it as data and not getting it wrapped up in who you are or your own ability, your own worth.
I think spelling that first blog was really helpful to see. I've been building the Good Train now for like 8 years, almost 10 years, but it's still a business. It's not who I am. I'm not it. It's not me. I might sell this business. If someone could grow it better than I can one day, which might certainly happen, then maybe it'll have a new home. And so I think as business owners, even when the work is like so coming from such a deep love for the work and care for the people you're doing it for, it's been I will still speak for myself. It's been very important for me to have that boundary around my own feelings and identity. And like, this is something I'm creating in the world that like, of course is going to have like ugly spots and blind spots and all of that. But I'm doing the best by this thing that lives outside of me, to water it, to care for it, to prune it, to grow it. But the feedback that we get that's negative is about the business. You know what I mean? Like, or the success. Like, it's about the team, the business, the representation of like this whole entity that has to live outside of like my own sense of like self-worth. And you know, things change, things could change. And I think that that's like really changed in becoming a mother too, of like, now I'm having this identity shift as growing myself into being a mother and having a daughter who's a year old now. And it's this shift away from like, oh, I am CEO of this media company, to know like who I am is actually like leader, nurturer, executive decision maker. Like, these are qualities that I've developed that I can implement into my work as a mother, and also into growing this business, into growing future businesses. Like, these are things that are a part of me, but the business isn't me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so beautiful. So wise. And I love that, because it's almost like with your daughter as well, like she is her own person.
Totally,
And just
totally.
like the business is,
Yes.
its own thing separate from you. And of course, it was birthed from a love that you have, and your daughter was, birthed from you and has your DNA and your blood, and that's
Yeah.
powerful. But she, at the end of the day, is also her own person. And you can use those qualities that you have, like you said, leadership, decision making, all of those things, to guide her and help lead her on to whatever it is that she's going to experience in the world.
Totally. Yeah, I really look at like businesses, and then now starting with parenting, it's like one day she'll graduate. One day my business might graduate me. You know what I mean? Like, a different type of leadership. One day my daughter will like not live at home. She will have come into her own, independence and adulthood and live beyond me and us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that does help me. I can't I don't remember the author of the poem, but about children, not being from you but passing through you. And
Mm.
I think that's such a profound feeling for children, but also for business, like to let something, flow through you, but it's not the same as you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know if we're thinking of the same poem, but I know one that is so powerful. And yeah, it talks about that very thing, how the mother knows that it's a miracle because it's, gosh, I'm going to butcher it, but like what you said, I'll just leave it at what you said. But it is so beautiful to see kind of these things that we have a part in raising and growing, and that's a part to play, but they aren't our identity at the end of the day. They're not who we are. And I think that hearing from you, that's super wonderful to just hear your perspective on it and your mindset, and how selling your first blog kind of helped that see, because I'm sure that was something that you were, really excited and passionate about at the time of birthing that project.
Yeah, it was so like close to home, and such a part, all the hours spent, all the love poured into it, and then to be like, okay, it's time to let it go.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What's it been like? So your daughter is 13 months old at the time of recording this. What has that been like, transitioning into motherhood while being the CEO of this media company?
Yeah, it's been really hard. It's been really hard. I mean, I love, like, there's so much about motherhood that I've found to be like the most meaningful thing I've ever experienced, and the most, like, I don't know, expanding and wonderful. But negotiating those two roles has been difficult. I think I always had fear that there would be like, that I would feel like I was needed in two places. And I definitely really struggled with that in the first 6 months or so after she was born. And I went back to work really early after for like 8 weeks. I was back pretty full time. And that was like too thin for me. It was just, if I could go back and do it differently, I would. But
How did you know that
recovering.
it was too soon?
I think just a few months after that, feeling like I'm so depleted, like most depleted I had ever been in my life, beyond, just so the physical exhaustion, not sleeping, breastfeeding, running the company, and like running the company in the pandemic, like having a baby, running a company while there's like massive seismic shifts in the world, the economy, all of that. And having, full staff and just trying to, the pressure was a lot. And I just felt like, no, there was like a lot of happy moments in work and with my daughter, but like a general like unhappiness of like, I'm not rested and well and like at my best at all. And I think part of that was like returning so early, and still breastfeeding, honestly, like that, it was just so hard to be pumping every 2 hours at work while in and out of like Zooms and meetings and just like doing 8 and 9 hour days away from her at that time was really, really hard. So anyways, it's gotten, not to be negative, but I do wish I had heard more. I felt like I heard so many stories of like, you'll ruthlessly prioritize and like your team will take everything on, it'll be amazing. And like both those things have totally happened. My team is so wonderful, but like also it was really, really, really hard. And and still is hard, but is definitely way, way, way less hard now that my daughter is like much more independent. We have established like really great care for her, and all of those things take time. We had some knitting transitions to like find the right fit for our family, and all of those things like take months. And then just starting to sleep through the night when she was 10 months, and I was like, I have creative energy again. I can like, I don't know, be present, be happy.
Is this what people feel like when they sleep? It's amazing.
Totally. So I do think that I do feel like I'm loving how much I felt like a mother for a long time of like this community, like not to say I don't, not to take like too much ownership there, but like the nurturing aspect of like what I love to do for my team and for my readers, like is something that's so familiar, that's become so natural with my daughter, that feels so rewarding as as a mom, and feels like practice and feels like something I have been developing over time.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I with my first did the same thing. I went back to work full swing. My son was born in May and we had a conference in August.
Yeah.
So I took like 3 weeks. I was supposed to take longer, but then he was really late and he like cut into my time. But I remember feeling a real pressure. I feel like in our culture, it's very glorified. Like, oh, she went back after a week of having her baby. And I felt that, like, I felt so much pressure to be like that one that people are like, wow, you only took this much time off. Like, you're amazing. And then after I did that, I felt awful because I was like, this is not what I want to be showing an example of. This is because having a baby is so intense on every single level. And then putting work in with that is just, it's so much. And I really felt that pressure of our culture of the like hustle, go, wow, 1 week only. That's amazing.
Totally. Were you able to change it with your second at all? Like the amount of time?
Yeah. With my second, I took 3 months off, which felt like so much. And I'm really glad I did. I think in an ideal world, I would have been able to take more, but as a small business owner, that was really what I could do. So I took 3 months and I felt really good about that. And also I made some decisions where I really planned ahead, like even just events that we were doing, even like digital stuff, planned ahead. So we didn't have an event like after having my kid. Yeah. And I was able to say, you know what, like, this is okay that I'm planning around my life, because I think there was some guilt there at first. And then I was talking to a mentor of mine and she was like, no, you can do this. Like, you get to do what you want. And I was like, okay,
totally.
We'll do that.
I definitely resonate with that. I felt like I needed to prove to like my team, my husband, myself, that like I could get back into work right away, or that I would want to, and looking back, it was like, who is that for? Like, when you get back in, you get back in. Like, it was there waiting for me for sure. And yeah, I think it's unfortunate that we don't support women better in our expectations. And just like the breastfeeding piece was just like so unreal. Like, it's just, I will either, if I have a second, take way more time off or not breastfeed, because for me, it was just like so much to juggle, and I felt so much guilt about it. Like, so much guilt about like, trying to multitask in this way, washing the pumps in the bathroom, like all the time, like forgetting the milk in the fridge at work, having to turn around, go home and get it for the baby. Like, all this stuff did not make me a better mom.
Oh my gosh, you saying all this is like bringing me back. Yeah, like pumping is like a full-time job. I'd
be like on Zooms, totally naked, stuff, muting myself while it's like, and it was just so like exhausting, kind of like, it just wasn't a good experience. Some people, it comes more naturally. I always had low supply, probably because I was stressed out, and but they tell you like, don't be stressed out, and then you'll have more milk. And I'm like, you telling me this is stressing me out. Therefore,
you're stressed because of your stress.
Totally.
Like, oh, I'm stressed. That means I'm not going to be making more milk. So now I am more stressed.
Totally.
I had a friend tell me, she was like, your body will make the milk your baby needs, and you just need to focus on that. And that was so helpful for me. But with my second was a very different experience. But with my first, my husband, when Shepherd was 5 months old, broke both of his wrists, and then he couldn't help. And I was like, I'm like feeding him and like doing all the things. And so that's when I was like, I'm done pumping. I'm done breastfeeding. I'm sorry. This is not what I planned. I wanted to breastfeed for longer, but I had to just give myself that permission to stop. And it was the best decision.
Totally. Yeah. I went down after 6 months. I was like, half time. And that was awesome. Like, that was enough to be like, okay, I'll only have to pump once at work. And that's so different from the beginning. And I wish I would have done that, right when I went to work, or pushed work, later. But we learn, right? And it like grows our capacity and our resilience. And I think it makes us like more empathetic and more understanding and better leaders in that way.
I totally agree. Well, AmyAnn, thank you so much for this conversation. I feel like I could talk to you for another hour here about all of the things. But let us know where our listeners can find you, how they can connect with you, and the amazing work that you're doing with The Good Trade.
Awesome. Well, we're at thegoodtrade.com. And if you go to the site, there's a tab that says newsletter. And that's a great way. We have a daily newsletter. It's a 30-second read every morning with just like bright, happy things to start your day on a calm, warm note. That's a great way to kind of enter our community. And then we're on social channels at The Good Trade.
Amazing. Thank you so much, AmyAnn.
Thank you.